Welcome once again to Along the Rio Grande. I'm George Torok, and today we're going to learn all about the Concordia Cemetery Walk through history. We have joining us in the studio today the past president of the Concordia Heritage Association and author, Dean Underwood. We have noted El Paso historian Leon Metz and El Paso Community College government professor Leon Blevins. Welcome to Along the Rio Grande.
Thank you for having us here.
Delighted to be here.
We probably ought to start by talking about Concordia Cemetery. Maybe, Leon, you can fill us in on this. Why is Concordia Cemetery an important cemetery? Why is it a historic cemetery?
All right, let's set the scene a little bit. Back in the 1700s, we had Juarez, or then called El Paso, had Ponce's Rancho on this side, and all this area belonged to Mexico. We had the Santa Fe Trail coming from St. Louis down to Santa Fe, and then it became the Chihuahua Trail from Santa Fe down through El Paso and into the interior of Mexico. So we get a young man by the name of Hugh Stevenson, who's born in Missouri. His wagon trains come rolling through here, and in Juarez he meets a young lady by the name of Juana Ascarity, and they marry, and they lease property on the today's El Paso side of the river, and their ranch is called Concordia. It's named for Concordia, Missouri, which is where Hugh Stevenson grew up. And they raise a family there. Juana dies by being gored by a pet deer. Hugh Stevenson himself visits the Oregon Mountains near Las Cruces. He had mining claims. He died while he was there, and I think is buried under the First National Bank parking lot at Las Cruces. But at any rate, the rancho itself passed into sort of disrepair, but people from El Paso who had been doing most of their burying up behind where the downtown public library is today now began moving out to the old Concordia Rancho. And in fact, in the 1880s, the El Paso Times mentioned that the prettiest cemetery in the county was the Concordia Cemetery. And it, of course, is divided into sections. There's a Jewish section, there's a Catholic section, there is a Masonic section, and there's at least a half a dozen other sections. I suspect that there's somewhere around 60,000 graves there, and I suspect also that there are graves underneath the interstate, probably underneath the streets and housing area there. But it's become, in its own right, one of El Paso's showplaces. And a lot of very important people are buried there, all the way from mayors to county judges to gunfighters to state individuals. It's one of El Paso's great historic treasures.
Now, Dean, you wrote a book about the Concordia Cemetery, a sort of a tour through it. What kind of people do we find there?
Well, entering on your right, you have the black section, and then you have black Masonic, you have the regular Masonic up on the right, then you have the Catholics, your Protestants, the Chinese with the big wall. Right in front of the Chinese you have the Mormon, then behind them you have the Jewish section, the very green portion. Then you have your city paupers, county paupers. You have so many owners of Concordia, and of course the individual families who still own plots and still have burials out there.
Now, the association, how did that get started? How did there develop an interest in the cemetery?
I think the association started primarily from the fact that the cemetery was simply disintegrating. It was an eyesore to drive past it and look in there. Kind of a disgrace to El Paso, and yet there was significance. There was historical significance in that old cemetery. So a group of people got together initially with the intention of simply keeping it clean, or trying to clean it up, move the vagrants out, people who were living in the cemetery, and establish some perimeters to put in stones where stones were needed. And at that point, once we began cleaning it up, then we began realizing that, hey, this deserves to be more than cleaned. It needs to be celebrated, and so that's where we're at today.
What kind of activities is the association involved in?
Once a year we have the John Wesley Hardin celebration, where we have a dinner and we go out there and at 11:01 and celebrate on his grave. Then we have our Walk Through History, an annual event, and we go out there and portray in first person, each person on an important person's grave, and they tell what they did for El Paso or while they lived in El Paso, while they were alive, and then how they died, some very unusual deaths. We have sheriffs, Texas Rangers, all kinds of people, movers and shakers of early El Paso.
And how many characters do we have portrayed at the walk?
We have at least 20 to 30 portrayed every year.
And we have some examples of that here today. Leon, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the character that you portray.
Well, I'm now portraying my third character. The first year that I worked with them, I believe it was 1999, I portrayed a Texas Ranger. I've passed that role off to my son Timothy. He's now doing that one. And then I portrayed last couple of years a U.S. Customs inspector who's buried in Concordia. And this year I have switched to James H. White, and he served at one time as a marshal in Las Cruces, then a customs agent here on the border, then fought with the Mexicans against the Europeans that were trying to take Mexico. He actually served in their army. And then he served as a sheriff of El Paso and tax collector. Later they divided those two, and he just became sheriff. Then he ran for mayor of El Paso. Well, he served as city police chief for a while. Then he ran for mayor, and he was not successful in winning that office. But he had over 14 years of public service, and a very adventurous person. He was the youngest enlisted person to fight in the Civil War, and he fought on the side of the South with General Robert E. Lee, and he was at the surrender at Appomattox. So he is buried in El Paso's Concordia Cemetery, and there is a very famous marker that is there.
Now, this is a fairly recent marker that's been put
It's
up?
been updated, and Dean Underwood handed me the research about this gentleman and was instrumental in getting an updating of that particular marker.
Now, how do we put together a costume? How do we know what people wore, and how do we replicate them?
Well, we have an idea of what people wore in general at that time, both
Sure.
men and women, different types of men, different types of women in their costumes. I decided to use this particular costume. In fact, I'm wearing my sidearm, which was typical of that time, the peacemaker as it became known as, and a sheriff's badge that would be typical of that particular period of time. And I decided to choose this particular vest. It's a Civil War Confederate Army vest, because he had served with the South during the Civil War. A lot of the people here on the border, of course, had fought on the side of the South. Sure. It was very typical to wear a black vest, a tan vest, various kinds, but I decided to wear this one because this would have been one that he would have had when he was working in the South.
And Dean, can you tell us about the character that you portray?
Well, today I'm portraying the most famous madam in El Paso, Madam Tilly Howard. And she is not buried in Concordia. She is buried in Old Evergreen, but she comes and visits every year, along with several other madams. But her most famous claim to fame, I think, was when John Selman passed by her house, and she blew her whistle, and he came running. Bass Outlaw was in her backyard and had set off a shot, and she was worried. And he inadvertently shot his friend, McKittrick, who was also a Texas Ranger, and murdered him because he was drunk. Bass Outlaw was mean when he was drunk. He was a nice guy when he was sober. So Selman came running, and McKittrick was dead, and he was angry, and he said, "What's up?" And Bass Outlaw shot him at first, past his eyes, and blinded him, and he had night blindness for the rest of his life. And then he shot him in the knee, and he had to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. So poor Selman couldn't see, and he shot blindly, and luckily hit Bass Outlaw near the heart, and he died saying, "Where are my friends? Where are my friends?" Recently we have marked Selman's grave, and we have a picture of that to show.
What other characters do we have portrayed during the walk? What other people have
Well, we have Harry Jackson plays John Woods, who made the first bell for Concordia. And then we have my most famous lady, Alzina Orndorff de Groff, Mama D, who borrowed $1 million and built the Cortez Hotel.
Sure.
And we have so many Texas Rangers. We have Ernest St. Leon Diamond Dick, who died in a gunfight, and he wore a stick pin, but his family told me recently he's not buried with that. They had to sell it to bury him.
By the way, George, I did a couple of posters on these characters, visitors, such as Dean has mentioned, and those that are actually buried in Concordia. So I'll leave those for you if you'd like to scan some of those, and you'll be able to just get a general glimpse of some of the characters that are buried there or that, as Dean said, visited there.
Let's take a look at some video that we shot of Harry Jackson portraying early El Pasoan, African-American El Pasoan, John Wood.
Share with you a few moments about the lives of John and Mary Woods. I'm John, of course, and this is Mary, my wife. And I want to share with you how we came to meet each other and some of the things that we encountered. I came from Richmond, Virginia in 1864. I was a slave there on the James River from my birth until age 32, when the president signed the Emancipation Proclamation in September of '62. As you probably know, the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted in January of '63. The reason for the delay was to allow owners to process paperwork for those slaves who wanted to enjoy their freedom. So then after this was completed, we were given what we as former slaves call the Freedom Pass. And that protected us as we traveled wherever we were going, in my case, west. When anyone would stop us, we could show that we were not runaway slaves, but that we were authorized now to be free and to pursue whatever we could achieve. I came to El Paso, as I mentioned, in 1864. I had learned a trade of the blacksmith during my slavery days, and when I came to El Paso by horseback, I brought my equipment with me. I traveled on occasions with other wagon trains to earn my way and to eat and to get out of the weather for some time, but that was just the way things were done in those years. When I arrived in El Paso, I set up a little shop on the northwest corner of the Sonia Center Plaza, and there's where I set up my work and began to work. And what was unique about those days is that a person performing a job or a task was not paid with money. We were paid with an agreement of land. And sometimes it may be a half acre, it may be a full acre. But this was how we were able, and I was able, to acquire land. Subsequently, I would sell the land for money to allow me to then enter other enterprises. Now, on one note, about a year and a half later, as I often did, I would go out and watch the stage come in to see who was new coming to town. And at this time, the young lady got off the stage, and she was black, and I was black, and I was prominent, so I figured I had a good chance. So I went over and I talked with this lady, Mary Villar, and helped her to get all settled. And after about 4 months of courtship, we were married. Now, Mary and I did not have any problems working. We were very devoted to one another and to what we were pursuing, and that was individualism. When we came into El Paso, and I think this is very important, when we came into El Paso, we being black folk, we were not a threat to the area because, one, there were so few of us, and secondly, and I think this is probably equally as important, is that I came in with a trade. I could contribute something to the area, and it was an area that was growing, so that I became a part of that growth.
So that's what people can see at the Walk Through History then. That was terrific. A lot of interesting characters out there. Of course, the most famous person that people associate with Concordia Cemetery is John Wesley Hardin, and I imagine he'll be included in the festivities somehow?
John Wesley Hardin's always included. In fact, anytime you walk into the cemetery and see someone, particularly a man, walking around as if he doesn't know what he's looking for the grave of John Wesley Hardin. With Hardin, you have a man who was born on the Red River in Texas. He was named for the founder of Methodism, very religious family that Hardin. In fact, his father was a Methodist preacher. Hardin begins his early life, though, by killing people in East Texas. Then he takes a cattle drive to Kansas, continues the killing along the cattle drive, in fact, kills 5 vaqueros in a very dramatic shootout on the Little Arkansas River, which forever after, a lot of people called him Little Arkansas. He wasn't little, but the Little Arkansas River was. But anyhow, Hardin then in Abilene, Kansas, bluffs down Wild Bill Hickok, kills another 3-4 people, including one man for snoring. And at that point, he decides to come back to Texas, makes a mistake, kills a Brown County deputy sheriff in Comanche, Texas. And at that point, the state of Texas is fed up. They put a $4,000 reward on John Wesley Hardin's head, making him the most wanted criminal ever in Texas. So Hardin knows that he can't, with that kind of money, the Rangers would follow him clear across the ice cap. So Hardin grabs up his family. He has a wife, 2 daughters, and a son. They flee to Arizona. They flee to Florida, where the Rangers caught Hardin on board a train, clubbed him to the floor, put him in chains, brought him back to Texas, tried him for the murder, and sentenced him to 25 years at Huntsville. Hardin tries to escape several times, brutally beaten, then completely reverses his role, becomes captain of the debating team, head of the Sunday school, studies law, gets his law degree. The governor's so impressed, he commutes the sentence to, I think, 18 years, 16 years actually. Hardin is out, his wife has died. He moves to Gonzales County to be with his children. They hardly know him. He then moves to Junction, Texas. He's 41, becomes involved with 15-year-old Callie Lewis. They imagine they're in love. They marry. The marriage lasts roughly an hour, at which time Hardin then comes to El Paso, hangs out his shingle downtown, John Wesley Hardin, attorney at law, and his only client that we know of is a cattle rustler by the name of, New Mexico cattle rustler by the name of Martin Moroz, who's driven into Juarez. And Martin has a very attractive wife named Beulah. And Martin says to Beulah, go to El Paso and get me an attorney. She comes to El Paso, gets John Wesley Hardin. Within a few days, Hardin has gotten her, and she isn't going back to her husband. The husband now, the ungrateful wretch that he is, begins threatening his attorney. Hardin hires the chief of police, Jeff Milton, the Texas Ranger, George Scarborough, Deputy Constable John Selman, and they lure Moroz across on the old Black Railroad Bridge, filled him so full of lead they could hardly pick him up off the ground, buried him in Concordia Cemetery, and today he lies 3 graves over from John Wesley Hardin. Hardin incidentally preached a funeral. He said there's some people you just can't help. But at any rate, Hardin now begins drinking too much, and one afternoon he argues with Constable John Selman. He walks in, Hardin does, that night about 10 o'clock into the Acme Saloon, about where Lerner's Dress Shop used to be on San Antonio. He bellies up to the bar. He plays a dice game called Ship Captain and Crew, in which he rolls the dice down the bar, and he turns to a grocer beside him and he says, Brown, you have 4 6s to beat. And at that moment, Constable John Selman steps through the door, fires 4 quick shots, and Hardin is history. Hit the floor flat on his back, lay there 2 hours while the whole town came by and took a look at him, and then they hauled him off to the undertaker, cleaned him up, and the newspaper said that except for being dead, he was in pretty good shape. And today, you're right, he's our best known tourist attraction.
Now you know why Concordia is a famous cemetery.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Now, in the spirit of the Wild West, we have other things that go on during the walk through history, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Six Guns and Shady Ladies. What's their role in the walk?
They do some authentic shootouts, which are called historical. Some that happened here in El Paso, like the Alice Abbott shootout with the 2 madams, which actually occurred, and the 4 Dead in 5 Seconds, which actually occurred, and the shootout in Miss Tillie's backyard. But we also do have some hysterical ones, we call them, just for laughs. So we do both kinds for entertainment. And they wear authentic clothing, period costumes, about 1895, and they portray the actual characters who were here in El Paso, including Pat Garrett and some others who lived here in El Paso.
Let's take a look at some video of the Madam Alice Abbott story, and talk a little bit about it when we come back.
Alice, I don't owe you any money. All you do is lie and cheat. You keep my dresses and my money. I quit. I don't have to work 4 for you. I'm going to work for Etta.
You think so? You're just a drunken little tramp? Get out of here. And when you get back, you're not getting out of my house.
Miss Etta, can I come to work now? I can't. I don't want to work for Ellen anymore. She did.
You think
Keep my money.
Of course you can, Bessie. Why don't you go back to Allen's, get your stuff, and come on back over here. We'll be waiting for you. I can always use another jewel in my crown.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'll be back.
Yeah, go on.
You'll wait for me?
We'll wait for you right here. Go on.
All right, cowboy.
You working tonight?
Oh, yes, but I don't work for Alice anymore.
Who are you working for?
I work for Miss Etta.
Does Alice know?
No, I'm just about to go get my things.
She's gonna.
Cowboy, you get out of here now! What did I tell you?
I told you I don't have to work for you, and I do
You
work.
think so?
Yes.
You owe me money and you're going to work every
Oh,
penny of
no,
that
I
off.
told Ellen you're all back. About that.
You think so?
Sit down, sit down.
Now, what do you want, Alice?
Let her get
I want my girl, Bessie,
Well, let her
get
get
away.
Alice, I'm only trying to treat you like a lady.
You try to treat me like a lady every time you get a new girl, you try to rope her away to just get out of my way. I've had it.
Please, Miss Etta,
Oh, she's very bad. She's a mess.
That's it.
Come on.
Here with you, I'm going to kill you with this. You and that sister of yours, you're going back to the house. I'm having with you. What you call me?
I called my fat out.
That's it. I've had enough to hear with you and that sister of yours, Dennis. I'm going to kill you both.
What's going on here? Get the doc. Get the doc. Somebody shot Alice.
She shot her. Look at that.
Hey.
But it keeps Alice.
You. She shot. See that? Where'd she shoot her? Can't tell where she shot her. Oh, I can see where she shot her. Look at that. You're going. She shot Alice. Help her. I don't know. She looks pretty mean to me. Oh, I bet you that hurts. That's the public art shall read.
Six Guns and Shady Ladies, that was something. So we'll expect to see a little bit of that at the Walk Through History as well.
Yes, sir. We enjoy doing it.
Great. Leon, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how people could get involved in the association, what kinds of help you might need.
Oh, well, I got involved in it a few years ago just from seeing a little news article in the El Paso Times. And sometimes you see people being interviewed on television about Walk Through History or the John Wesley Hardin dinner. Right. So I called the number that was in the newspaper. Now, in our case, let me give my number here at the community college, 831-2503. All right? So if anyone wants to know who they need to be put in touch with, I can do that. Because sometimes they have a different person that's in charge of walk-through in a given year or the John Wesley Hardin dinner in a given year. So through my office, I would be able to direct them how they can volunteer. We need people to help set up things for the activities of that day and take things down. We need people that will help working in the country store and various things like that because we will have articles for sale. And this is all for fundraising to fix up Concordia Cemetery. Just many, many needs. We need people that can volunteer to do characters, and we can help them with their costuming and things of that nature. All ages, size, shapes, and ages, and ethnic groups are involved in this activity.
So you don't necessarily have to perform.
You don't have to
If you're a little
perform.
bit shy, but you want to get involved, you can still
Exactly.
help out.
Exactly.
Terrific. Now, I understand that you went to a conference recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Western Outlaws of America and also the National Outlaw and Lawmen Association of America, and they had a combined meeting in Sacramento, California. And we were out there for about 4 or 5 days, and we had conferences on different outlaws. They had guest speakers, among them Leon, on research and writing. And he had a surprise at the banquet. He got a very special, prestigious award for lifetime achievement in Western writing. Wow. And he can tell you all about his acceptance speech.
I didn't have an acceptance speech. They kept nudging me, say a few words, Leon, and I stepped up to the podium and I said, I don't know what to say. Nothing seems appropriate at this time. I was caught totally flat-footed by it.
The only time in his life he was speechless. He did say thank you, though.
I'm sure it was well deserved, and we do want to thank you. We all want to thank you for the work you've done over the years in promoting El Paso history and letting people know about the wonderful heritage of this area and many of the interesting characters that have been here. Thank you. Well, we certainly want to invite everybody out to the Walk Through History coming up at Concordia Cemetery here in El Paso. And I want to thank all three of you for coming in today and telling us about your role in this. Dean, we hope to see you out there, and maybe
My
people
pleasure.
will take a look at your book and take a tour of the cemetery and learn a bit more about it. Leon, once again, congratulations, and thank you for coming in and telling us about John Wesley Hardin. And Leon, we'll see you around campus, of course, in a number of different costumes, but we'll also see you at the Walk Through History.
Right.
And we want to thank all of you for joining us today as well on Along the Rio Grande. And let's finish with some musical entertainment from the group The Centurions.
It won't be water, we'll find next time. Way back in the Bible days, Noah told the people it's gonna rain. But when it told them, they paid him no mind. And when it happened, said they were left behind. So help me, it's gonna rain, it's gonna rain. You better get ready and better say hallelujah. Noah, a rainbow sign. He said it won't be water, but fire next time. They tell me when the water began to pour, ooh, they knocked on the window, they knocked on the door. The people didn't know exactly what to do, and if you ain't careful, it can happen to you. So help me, it's gonna rain, it's gonna rain. You better get ready and better say hallelujah. So Noah, a rainbow sign. He said it won't be water, but fire next time. Noah said, I'm sorry, my friends, but God's got the key and you can't get in. If something doesn't happen to change the hearts of men, well, the same thing can happen again. So brothers, it's gonna rain.